Now, for those of you in this class who have ever fallen in love, you know how it is. You have a boyfriend, he doesn't call you, you think about him. You have a girlfriend, she doesn't call you, you think about him. You do something wrong, they scream at you, they leave you, and you think about them. It's all because of love. I don't know how anyone is able to fall in love with something that they can't see, touch, taste, hear. Wisdom. It doesn't fit anything. We don't know what it is. And yet, the demand of philosophy is that you need to fall in love with wisdom. You need to fall in love with darkness, with the unknown. And that's profoundly difficult. And the easiest way for any of you in this class to fall in love with philosophy is to first find a philosopher, like a Socrates. Fall in love with the philosopher. And if the philosopher is any good, he or she will eventually lead you to philosophy's door. And then you have to sit there and knock for many, 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 many decades. And if you're lucky, if the gods like you, the door will open, you get a glimpse. If you're not lucky, well. Yes, Bethany. Sure. Yes.
I can give my own.
First of all, if you were to look at the painting, Thomas Cole's painting, when it comes to childhood, we're not really talking about a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old. We're talking about an infant who's still in diapers, I think. Maybe she is completely naked, I don't really know. But if they happen to be naked, it means that they have not yet been contaminated by social shame, by do's and don'ts or moral codes or ethical codes. The other thing you need to understand is on this raft, there is also a tiny angel, okay, that's protecting the kid. The kid, what also this infant doesn't see is that there is a sand clock at the very front of this boat, which means that the child is oblivious to the fact that his or her life is going to be on borrowed time, so to speak. None of us in this class know when that time is going to come, that you will be here no more. And so one of the reasons why you're able to have a good time with your buddies and have a good time and ask silly questions and do silly things is because you think that there is going to be a tomorrow, that there is time for laughter and joy. The other thing is that this infant in this boat doesn't feel any pain because the waters are calm. It's not like you're born and you see your parents fight. And even if you were to see your parents fight, you wouldn't know what fighting really is. You were just born. So when it comes to the universality of an infant, they all come out, they all scream, at least most do. You spank them a little, you wrap them in this towel really, really tightly, and they just go to bed. And they wake up, they scream, they want to be nursed, and that's what childhood is. You're just happy. It is true that some kids are like fire, they come out screaming and they live out their life screaming, and some kids are quite passive, they're just quiet. But for the most part, you're a blank slate, tabula rasa. You don't know what divorce is, you don't know what right is, what wrong is. You walk around naked, you actually enjoy it. You do all sorts of crazy things. That's what kids do. And little by little, they become contaminated. So when you say you could talk about your childhood, I think what you're referring to is the moment you were able to kind of see and analyze and distinguish between feelings that are positive versus negative, where you're able to kind of know what pain is, what pleasure is, that are your parents screaming because they just watched someone score a touchdown? Are they screaming because they have a disagreement? You know, so if you're talking about that particular aspect of childhood, then yes, we all have different ones, and different narratives create for a different psychology. In other words, if, for example, your parents divorced at the age of 2, or you saw them fight all the time, or you were missing a father or a mother, or whatever the case may be, if, in other words, the formative years, 0 to about 6, when the concrete is wet, if it suffers any traumas, then that concrete is always going to have this crack within it. In other words, you're always going to not trust men. You're always going to be passive when it comes to arguments in relationships. You're always going to remain single, even if married, because you never saw your parents getting along. And that becomes kind of your platform as to how you should function in any relationship. If, on the other hand, you have come from a relatively decent, functional background, yeah, the first man who looks at you says, "I love you." And he says, "I love you too." And of course, hopes, dreams, imaginations begin. And then life just teaches you that you were stupid. That's a different kind of information that comes your way. You are very healthy. Life just teaches you that just because you're healthy, it doesn't mean you ask the right questions. You're reflective. You're just healthy. You have good parents. And should life beat you up, you can always walk to your parents' house and they'll receive you. Okay? The first scenario is that you really never had a healthy foundation. It's always been cracked. And you're looking for a Messiah to save you. And even if a Messiah was to walk into your life, you would poison that relationship because that's the only thing you know. So again, one of the things I think you should do if you're talking about this first painting is actually go back and look at the painting itself. You do it yourself and pay attention to all the things that exist in that, first painting. The sand clock, the rocky mountains, the fact that the sky is gloomy. And despite all the horrors that surround the kid, this kid is very happy. And the question is why? There's an earthquake, everybody is dying or miserable, and yet you're just simply there and laughing at everything. And like Albert Camus, where you say, well, life has always been absurd, ridiculous, Anything? Kendra? Mercy. Compassion is a feminine quality. Mercy is a masculine quality. What? Sorry? Oh, because I'm a kind of a black-white sort of a fellow. I don't like this idea of inclusivity and fluidity. It doesn't work for me where I am in life. One could say that mercy comes out of compassion, or one could say that compassion comes out of mercy. Mercy is an act of judgment. In other words, you have seen someone do something, and that something has been deemed a negative. It's poison for the person, it's poison for society. Now the question is, well, how do you want to punish them? So mercy is a judgment. Now, I know that some of you in this class read books and watch videos that say, be non-judgmental. Even if you were to kind of read, I think, the Gospel of Luke, he'll say, you shouldn't judge because you'll be condemned by your own judgment, which for the most part is true, but the idea that thou shalt not judge doesn't make any sense, because the moment you have an emotion, the moment you have a feeling, that is a judgment. You have gotten yourself to a place where you have concluded that a certain event is simply negative. We have no choice but to be profoundly judgmental creatures. Now, what you want to do with the conclusion you have reached is a very, very different story. Now, there are a couple of things that can happen in the act of mercy. You have deemed an action to be negative. compassion comes about. Is it an eye for an eye, or is it complete forgiveness? You have reached a conclusion that something is bad. The question now is, now that compassion comes out of this element of mercy, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to turn the other cheek? Or do you want to slap the person back to teach them a lesson so that they won't do it ever again? So mercy becomes masculine, whereas compassion becomes feminine. Compassion has a good amount of empathy in it. Compassion has a good amount of sympathy in it. Compassion tries to be as non-judgmental as it possibly can. So when you see a homeless person, you say, oh, it was probably his fault. Oh, he's probably a drunk. Oh, he's probably an addict of sorts. You don't think about those things. You're going to put your hand in your pocket and give him $10. There is also this element of mercy that, let's say you're my wife, I'm your husband, you do something that goes beyond the boundaries of our relationship, and I catch you. Now you say, Amir, my husband, my love, have mercy. In other words, what you're saying is, I know that I'm caught. I know what I have done was wrong. Let the punishment not be so severe. Compassion doesn't work that way. Compassion is blind. You know, compassion is, you come home, you're seeing me doing something I shouldn't have been doing, and you kind of just forgive. There is no mercy involved. What you have in the position of God or anyone who is wise or any parent is that they see you, they have caught you, and now they have this dilemma. What should they do? To what degree should their compassion be expressed? Should they completely look the other way and forgive you completely? Should it contain some reprimands as a lesson to protect you from future? Now, the problem with human beings is that we don't really have a good tool to observe things well. We don't reflect on things well. We are sentimental. We are overly emotional. That makes us blind. It poisons ourselves as well as the other person. It's something that Friedrich Nietzsche, the German existential philosopher, talked about, that there is a story, you've heard of Sa'di. There is a story about Sa'di. He's a Persian Sufi poet around the 12th century, if I'm not mistaken. One day, this mother, and let's just kind of modernize the story. One day, this mother is sitting, on the sofa comfortably and having her Subway sandwich, and her phone rings. She picks up, and it's from the police department. Your son is in jail. If you want to come and take him, you can. And the mother goes to the son, and she's, of course, heartbroken. She looks at the son and says, what the hell happened? Yeah, I was stealing ABCD and I got caught. And the mother slaps the kid. And the kid looks at the mom and says, Mom, I'm 25. Do you remember when I was 2 and I stole a candy from the market and you saw me stealing the candy, but you smiled and looked the other way? Had you slapped me when I was 2, I wouldn't end up in the position that I am today. And it kind of examines our notion of compassion and forgiveness. When do you want to look away? At what stage? What is the crime? What is the transgression? And because we are lousy observers of life, of ourselves, of our other people, of the way we think and feel and behave, and we are extremely sentimental, it becomes poison to us, to our psyches, our lives, as well as other people. So I think the first thing you need to do is first be a very, very good philosopher. Begin to think well. Once you think well, then allow your emotions to kind of open this gate, have your emotions come out. And now when you become emotional, they go through this reflective filtration. If I was to take this or make this a little bit more personal, when I was a young instructor, I would have students who would come to my office after like 4, 5, 6 weeks and say, yeah, I haven't been to class because of ABCD, and I haven't done any of the assignments because my dog died, or ABCD, but I really love you. And here's $10, or here's a bag of coffee. Say, okay. I would give them a C, depending on, how cute they were. If they were really cute, I would give them an A, And then they turned out to be like George Bush, a D student, a C student, but eventually becomes a president, but because he lacks the ability to think well about things, or anyone really. It's like you're an American, freedom is the cornerstone of who and what you are. You're 18, you look at your parents and say, Mom, Dad, I'm an adult now. I won't exercise my freedom. But what can your parents do? They too are like, have poison inside them. They actually think that because you're 18, that you're an adult and you can go out there and do whatever. And you go out there like the prodigal son story, you make a mess of your life, and then you come back, you're homeless, you're an addict, everything is wrong with you. And so then you become really, really pissed off at your kids because everything about them is wrong. And then at a moment of inspiration, your child looks at you and says, Mom, I was 18. I never went to school. I played video games most of my life. How could you just send me out there? I was like a lamb. You sent me into the den of thieves. Of course I got devoured. So, yeah. Is it? Anyone else? Julian? Yeah. No. Because there is a difference between Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and an academic philosopher. See, I went to school and I read books and I plagiarized my essays. I copied and pasted. I got degrees given to me by lousy instructors, a lousy committee. Then I came here, and all the jobs I've had, the interview process, half hour. How could you get to know someone in half an hour? And who makes up this committee of 5 or 10 people? Academics who don't think well about anything. And the academic institution is like this clogged up sewer. It really is. It's all about politics. So when you talk about philosophers, you need to understand you have a Christian like Jesus, and you have a Christian like Pat Robertson. You have a philosopher who teaches at Laney, me, or someone at San Francisco, and you have Plato. These are apples and oranges, night and days. So when you talk about philosopher, it's best to say, what is the difference, for example, between an academic philosopher or someone who follows the letter of the law versus someone who follows the spirit of the law? What is the difference between some guy who looks at a woman and respects their body versus someone who looks at the woman, respects their mind, and someone who looks at a woman and respects her soul? These are 3 different men coming to 3 very, very different conclusions, finding pleasures in 3 different areas. You can have sex, but feel guilty afterwards. You could have a great conversation and feel as if you've just had the sexual intercourse without ever touching this person. So before you ask your question in full, I just needed to say that because a lot of people just say, what are philosophers like? I'll tell you the moment I meet one, real one. Yeah, go ahead. I'll tell you a story. It's not really a story, it's more of a... I borrowed this from one of my good friends. He's now dead. His name is Idris Shah. He's from Afghanistan, lived in London, wrote lots of books. He tried to popularize and advertise his ideas, but internet wasn't around way back then. You need 3 things to make anything good. If you say to me, Amir, come to my house for dinner. First, you need to be a good cook. That's a prerequisite, man. If you don't know how to cook, don't invite any goddamn person to your house. Don't waste their time. Because they're going to end up either with a tummy ache or diarrhea. You don't want to do that to people. So first, before inviting people, make sure you are a good cook. That's the first thing you need to have. Second, if you're a good cook, make sure you have the ingredients for the dish you want to make. Don't say, Amir, I'm going to give you kebab, and I come to your house and you give me like carrots. That's messed up. So it's not enough for you to be a good cook. You need to have the ingredients to make the right dish. Third, it's not enough for me to come to your house. I need to come to your house with an empty stomach. What's the use of you spending 10 hours in the kitchen, making the most delicious food? And I come to you and said, yeah, I just went to In-N-Out and had a double and French fry animal style. And I had a shake to push everything down. Because the moment you put the food on the table, I'm going to vomit. So when you talk about philosophers, here's the thing. How did I become interested in philosophy? That's the first thing. Did my interest in philosophy become contaminated at any time during my course of wanting to become a philosopher? Did I become political? Did I prefer information over wisdom, light over darkness? Because you need to go through the darkness if you want to be a good philosopher for a long, long time. It's like you get married for all the wrong, stupid reasons. You realize things don't work out. Well, when you separate, you have to go through this dark place. You have to grieve. You have to punish yourself. You have to cry. You have to repent. And those things baptize you. And then you recover, hopefully, after 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Then you go out to the dating scene. And then you begin to ask the right questions. So the grief and the dark period are cradle for the insights and wisdoms that you will have, hopefully, in the future. Now, it's not enough for me to be able to read dialogues of Plato. How am I processing the information? Am I doing it through my emotions? Am I doing it through my intellect? Am I doing it through my spirit? Do I even have one? Because if you process things the wrong way, it's like food being processed the wrong way. It's going to have a lump inside your throat. So you need someone, you need to be a student of someone who knows this stuff really, 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 really well. My recommendation for any of you who want to become good in thinking, go to YouTube and watch Larry Hahn. He's a framer. He builds houses. He's dead now. I think he had cancer and passed away. I watch him every morning. When I come to the campus around 5 in the morning, I spend about 20 minutes just watching the same videos over and over again. And he explains things so clearly. You know why? Because he's been in the business for such a long time. And he knows his stuff inside and out. I don't want to sit back and listen to that young punk who just got himself a nailer and a compressor, and it's his first time because they want to get clicks on YouTube, And so you realize, well, I am watching Larry Hahn because I enjoy his experiences. He explained things really, really well. And when I follow his lead, what I build comes out really good. So, it may be that you may be in the desert, you look around, there are no good philosophers, no good person out there who can think well about things. And so you take it on your own self to go to the library and read the dialogues of Plato. But you're going to process the dialogues of Plato within a framework of an 18-year-old who has zero life experiences, an American 18-year-old who has lived in the cradle of capitalism, consumerism, retail therapy, advertisement, sex, porn, drugs, lots of trash. You will never be able to process Plato the way it ought to be processed. Now, you may come to this class, you may raise your hand, and you may correct me about everything I say about Plato, and you may be right. The only difference is you know the information, you just don't know what this information really does for the right people, i.e. Plato. I have lots of tools in my garage, I just no longer use them. They're a waste. You have lots of instructors who have a lot of information, they're just expressed bad. It's a waste. They're a waste. And when you really, really think about things well, you realize almost everything is a waste. Well, this has been a happy day. Sure, a quickie, yes, of course. Spoken like a man, yeah.
Is there such thing as a positive struggle?
No. Well, it depends what you're struggling towards. If, let's say you're struggling to find yourself a companion, okay? If you're 20, it's going to be positive. Go to any bar, go to any party, get high, get drunk, and your struggle, it'll yield some fruit. You wake up in the morning and there's like a camel laying next to you. Okay? It's positive. If on the other hand, it's you, at the age that you are, the experience you've had, go out there, do some dating apps, go out with a few people, and you realize it's a really, really difficult thing to endure. First, you have to pay for the food. Then you have to sit back and listen to their nonsense for 2-3 hours. You want to throw up, but you can't. You want to leave, but you have enough decency and enough self-respect and respect for the other side. No, you know what? I'm just going to suffer through this because I'm a Christian. Suffering is good. And then after a while you say, you know what? Screw this. I'd rather just be alone and die alone than go out on more dates like this. So it depends who you are, what you are. It depends what you're after. If you're after cheap entertainments, you have to make an effort. You have to struggle. You have to have some resources. If on the other hand, what you're looking for is expensive, if you're looking for a woman who's like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, then it's going to be difficult because they demand too much and you demand too much. And in a culture such as this, filled with trash, are you kidding? You're not going to end up with anything.
We pinpoint it a little bit because you mentioned two types. What about a real person? You find someone that's really in sync with you.
No. There is no one in sync with you. If you're talking about like having a soulmate, one of those ridiculous ideas, like hippie ideas. Look, you want real? I'll give you real. If you are 62 and you got a 7-year-old daughter on your hand and you're going to school and you got a job, you ain't got time for romance, man. Your life is all about politics. So when you're at work, you need a woman who's going to take care of the house, you need a woman who's going to take care of the kid, and you have a woman who is relatively self-sufficient and independent. Because when you come home after like 5 hours of work and you're exhausted, you don't want someone looking and saying, do you love me? Are you happy with me? No, you want to be left alone. You want your sandwich, you want to sit on the sofa and watch the movie Succession.
Pretty darn close.
So good luck. I'm sorry. Anyone else? We have.
I was gonna ask, is that a part of your experience?
Mine?
Yeah. I was gonna say,
Sorry?
I was just gonna ask, like, personal question.
Sure.
Is that like a part of your experience? Having a good job.
Well, I'm an immigrant. I came here I left my country in 1977. And so I also am conflicted in the sense that I'm Persian, I speak the language, I was in my country for long enough to know what my culture is all about. I read the language, I sing the language, I music the language. So I am very much ingrained in the culture. I have not had any American friends. I mean, I have acquaintances, and I suppose you can categorize as casual friends, okay? I've also lived here. But whatever lives in America, I compare it to what lived back home for me. So, and as you get older, you become more traditional. Also, I have had the luxury of being born at a time where there was no internet, being born in a village, life being profoundly simple, you know. So I also compare the present to the past. Now, it may not be the right thing to do, but I do it nevertheless, and I don't care what people say or think. Now, I also worked at my parents' car wash. And also to tell you, when you're an immigrant and when your visa is no longer valid, you have to lie and cheat and steal to survive. Okay? So was I a thief? Absolutely. Did I lie? Oh, definitely. Without it, you can't survive. Okay? Now, as an immigrant, you have no choice but to be a janitor, to be a dishwasher, to be a cook, to work at gas stations, graveyard, to work at Church's Fried Chicken, okay? You do all that stuff. Then your parents come here. And then you're a slave to them at the car wash, as I was, for 20 years. We still have the car wash. In fact, I'm going there today to fix the car wash right after this class. And the car wash is in Auburn, which is about almost 2 hours from here. Yeah. So, and while doing all of that, I also went to school. But before going to school, I had my own private teacher. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of things that I say has to do with what I went through. You know, it's like if you and I were to go on a date and I was to ask you, so what has been your dating experience? Well, you're going to go back in time and tell me what. You know, I went with Bob when I was 5, then I went with John when I was 7, when I went to Jack when I was 25. So, oh, okay. That's what it is. We are nothing but a collection of experiences. Having said all of that, someone is going to get to the car wash at noon and I need to be there. So with your permission, I'm going to run. But I'll be back next week, Monday. Yeah, I'll see you then. Thank you. It's good to see all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.